you've written, how can I observe anxious feelings without wanting to run away from them? I don't know. How can you observe anxious feelings without wanting to run away from them? Do you have to do that? Why do you have to observe the anxious feelings? You don't have to type a response. I'm not looking for your answer. I'm asking you so you can answer. No, you don't. And now I've just told you the answer, my answer. You don't have to observe your anxious feelings. What comes up over my response over here to what you've said is, instead concentrate on the self. Concentrate on that sense of presence, that sense of being in your heart. Be with yourself, be with the heart. Don't worry about the anxious feelings. Let God deal with them. Your job is not to be your own psychotherapist. Your job is not to be your own psychoanalyst. That's what the mind does. That's not the way of the heart. It might be a part of it. Another time you might hear me saying to somebody, yes, you need to be with your anxious feelings. You need to watch them, okay? So the teachings vary. I'm sorry about the inconsistencies, but what's coming up here right now in response to that is, you don't have to be with them. Just be with your heart. Be with a sense of presence. That's that stillness, that palpable stillness that's always here. Be with the I am. Me, 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 me. I. Me, 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 me. I. Be with that sense of me. That sense of I. That sense of here-ness. That sense of presence. Be with that. Can you feel it? Can you feel that you're here? Me, 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 me. I. Not I am anxious, I'm anxious, I'm anxious. But just the I. Just the I am. As often is said, not the I am this or the I am that, just the I am. Just be with that. Hi Tom, last time you had a live stream, I asked the question, how can I observe my anxious feelings instead of wanting to run away from them? But I didn't realize until later that you misunderstood my question. I'm very sorry about that. What I meant is, how do I watch them? Not how do I analyze them? I still loved your answer anyways. Thank you very much. But I was wondering how your answer would change, since now you know I meant watch instead of analyze. Thank you so much, and great to be here with you. Oh, thank you. It's great to be here with you as well. I'm really glad you come along again. And I'm sorry I got the wrong end of the stick. How can I watch my anxious feelings instead of wanting to run away? So my sense is that usually when people have anxious feelings or any kind of strong emotion that's maybe throwing them off balance in some way, most people, and this makes sense by the way, most people want to get rid of those feelings. That makes complete sense. If something's unpleasant, the sort of it's completely understandable that the initial response would be to try and remove that unpleasantness. And anxiety isn't often pleasant, so we often try and remove it. Now, instead of trying to remove it, what happens if we're not trying to remove it? Let me just put it that way. What happens if we're not trying to remove the anxiety? What if we are okay with the anxiety? What if we're okay with whatever's happening? What if whatever's happening, we're okay with it? It's okay. So maybe you've got a lot of anxiety coming in your mind, and you've got those feelings that can accompany anxiety, maybe a tightness in the chest, and some kind of what we call butterflies in the stomach, this kind of digestive system symptoms. Maybe you're shaking, maybe your heart's beating, maybe you're sweating, maybe you're getting tension across the front of your forehead, your back of your head, these typical tension headache type symptoms. Maybe you're not sleeping well. Whatever it is, what if we're just okay with that? Maybe what if we're just trying not to run away from it, and we also don't necessarily have to embrace it either. We just see what happens, and then you can notice lots of different levels to what's going on. Often you'll start to notice that you do want to get away from it. You really don't like it. There might be a second layer of thought saying, oh gosh, I'm so anxious, I hate this anxiety, I hate being anxious. Or what often happens is, like, people are often anxious to have difficulty sleeping. And often, especially if you have a busy day, what I often see in my patients is that people are quite busy during the day. You often don't notice anxiety because you're distracted by all the busyness. And then as soon as you lie down in a bed by yourself, you're just alone with your thoughts. And that's when all the anxiety comes, the palpitations come, you might have difficulty breathing. You can even work yourself up into a panic attack. What if you just notice all this stuff and you start noticing your response and your judgments of the anxiety, and just start don't say I shouldn't judge. Start to learn about yourself. Start to learn about what kind of person you are. Say, okay, oh gosh, I really judge my anxiety. I really am trying to get rid of it, aren't I? Yeah, let me learn more about myself. What else do I do? Oh my gosh, I'm now saying I hate this anxiety. Gosh, there's a lot of venom and hatred being shown towards my anxiety. And then there's another thought comes up, oh gosh, I'm never going to sleep because I'm so anxious. And if I don't sleep, I'm going to be exhausted tomorrow. And if I'm exhausted tomorrow, I'm going to feel shit tomorrow. And if I feel shit tomorrow, I'm not going to do my work properly. If I don't do my work properly, my boss is going to have a go at me. And if my boss has a go at me, I want to feel really shit. And then that's going to be more anxious. And so you notice how you notice all these things that the mind does. And then you can notice that none of these things are you. This is just what the body-mind's doing out of its conditioning. This is what's happening. And out of that, there can arise a kind of compassion, a love, in which what you're doing, you're allowing the body-mind to be anxious. And what will probably happen is that the anxiety will continue for a while, and then eventually it will stop. And you might be exhausted the next day, but that's okay. As long as you maintain that attitude of allowance and acceptance, it starts to heal. Now, if you've got anxiety, there are a few other things I'd recommend, depending how severe it is. But I'd recommend you learn about anxiety. You learn about the hormonal things that happen when you're feeling anxious, especially if you have panic attacks. Learn about adrenaline and how that has effects on the heart. Learn about the fight and flight response. Just educating yourself about anxiety can really help alleviate anxiety. If it's interfering with your ability to actually function on a day-to-day basis, please see a doctor or a professional, because anxiety is easy to treat. It's so easy to treat. It takes a bit of time, takes a bit of effort. Often the first treatment doesn't always work for everyone, so sometimes you've got to try a few different things. Maybe sometimes people have to try 3 or 4 different therapies or things before they find the one that works for them. But then it's easy to treat. I've had patients with tremendous anxiety, so much anxiety you wouldn't believe. You wouldn't believe. And now they're fine. Sometimes they have a bit of anxiety here and there, but they're happy, they're able to live their lives. So if you need to seek professional help, seek professional help. Depersonalize the body and mind. Realize the body and mind is just like a machine. If your washing machine breaks down, are you just trying to fix it yourself? Or do you seek an expert to come in and help you? You know, non-duality is not going to fix your washing machine. In the same way, there are better ways of dealing. I mean, non-duality can help with anxiety. There are also very specific tools and techniques that can be used to deal with specific psychological or even psychiatric problems or physical problems. So if you've got specific psychological issues, then take the time to learn about those psychological issues. It can help you a lot. There are YouTube videos out there, there are books out there. Please explore them. But the non-duality aspect of it is just to, instead of trying to get rid of them, trying to get rid of anxiety, just notice what's happening. And with the intent to understand patterns and trends. And what you might notice is that you just want to get rid of it, and that's fine, because then now you're starting to learn about who you are as a person. Yeah, the body mind. You're learning about the body mind. It's what Jiddu Krishnamurti used to call self-knowledge. He used to call self-knowledge not knowledge of the absolute, but learning about what it is to be a human being, learning about the human self. Fear and panic, it can be really tough to deal with those emotions, those feelings. There's no one piece of advice that works for everyone. And I think it's really beneficial to find a good counselor, or even a good friend, someone to talk to, someone who can be with you through your issues, somebody who can have a chat to you, because there isn't, in my view, a one solution fits all, one size fits all. Just to give you an example, for some people, a beneficial thing to do is to sit with the emotion, to allow yourself to feel the emotion, and to allow the emotion to come and go. But for some people, sticking with their feelings can actually cause problems, especially if there's been a lot of trauma. And sticking with the feelings can actually cause you to relive the trauma. If you're in a place that's strong enough where you're able to deal with that, then that can be beneficial. But for some people, it can actually set them back. So that's just one example of how there is no sort of fixed teaching when it comes to mental health issues. And I don't know how severe the anxiety is. It could be something quite mild, in which case you might be able to deal with it by yourself. You might be able to read some books on it, watch some YouTube videos on it, do some self-CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and deal with it that way. Or it might be much more deep-seated. It might go back into your childhood and things like that. So it's different for everyone. I really recommend talking to people that you trust. If needed, if it's interfering with your ability to do things in your daily life, especially, if it's interfering with your relationships or your work, then I would really highly recommend seeing a psychologist or a counselor. So I am in the experience of having accidentally eaten and chewed up a shard of glass with my supper the day before yesterday. And upon the realization that I'd done that, you had a bleeding tongue and a chipped dish. You've been struggling with fear and panic and are extremely hyper alert, and the body feels sensitive. You're constantly having to console and comfort yourself. So much fear. I know the best thing is to just relax and trust. The gap before I wake up in the morning is the best time. Then the fear hits me. It is such an amazing learning experience. Any tips on surrendering and trusting? It does sound quite scary. I'm sorry that's happened to you. And I can full well imagine how that can trigger a whole load of fear, maybe latent fears and latent insecurities that were already there can be triggered by a traumatic event, such as glass cutting your tongue. See, it's funny because you could eat some glass and it can cut your tongue, and no one wants that to happen to themselves. But yet for some people it will happen, and it's not ideal, it's far from ideal, it might be scary, but then it's just over with, and that's it, done. There's no trauma, there's no sort of psychological consequence. And yet for someone else, it can bring up, it can trigger all these things. And it can be very fearful. And when I'm talking about this, I'm not judging, I'm just describing that it's different for different people. There's no judgment implied here. So I hope you don't feel judged when I say that. You asked, are there any tips for surrendering? Well, given that what I say might not be right for you, with that caveat, I'll give you my tips, and then you can see if what I suggest resonates for you. So my response to what you said is to give this all to God. This fear, this anxiety, this hypervigilance, which is characteristic of a traumatic reaction, a traumatic response. If you've been traumatized now or in the past, when that trauma is relived on some level, these are the symptoms. Fear, anxiety, hypervigilance, maybe a sense of depersonalization, derealization, a sense that you're not real. Maybe an emotional numbness. Maybe a feeling of being wired. These are classic symptoms that are well established, well described in the literature of people who've gone through something traumatic. Whatever spectrum of things you're experiencing, you could try this. You could say, I didn't choose any of this. I didn't choose all these emotions. I didn't choose all this suffering. God, this is your problem. You deal with it. And give it all to God. Say, God, you deal with this. I haven't chosen to experience all this shit. You deal with this shit. You've given me this shit. Now you deal with it. I'm giving it back to you. Now, obviously, not everybody has a relationship with the word God, or the sense of God, or the sense of presence. So find a word that works for you. Maybe you have a guru, a teacher, and maybe you could give it to your teacher. And the real guru is not the physical form. Guru, self, and God are the same. Or maybe you can use the concepts of the universe. The universe has given me this stuff. I'm giving it back to the universe. Let the universe deal with it. And the universe will take care of it. You've also already touched upon something, which is acknowledging it's a learning experience. To genuinely understand that everything that comes your way is a gift from God. One of the words for gift in the Sanskrit language is prasad in Sanskrit and prasad in my family's language of Bengali. So you can see everything as prasad, gift from God. Everything's a gift from God. And you might not understand the gift. You might not understand the lesson that's being taught to you. You might think, why me? Why now? You might think, I don't need this. This is what I do not need right now. Why are you giving me this now? Woe is me. Why does this stuff always happen to me? I can't believe this has happened. Maybe a part of you can see this as a gift from God. You might not be able to understand it right now, but have gratitude. Now, some of you won't be able to do that. So there's no one-size-fits-all answer for these questions. Sometimes what happens is that we react. Sometimes what happens is we get annoyed. Sometimes what happens is we feel frustrated or we get angry. In this particular person here, Tom, all those things happen. It's okay. If you're sitting here and you're being with who you are, you're being with yourself, you're being in this present moment, you're being with me here, and it doesn't feel happy, and maybe you feel a bit tense or it doesn't feel relaxed, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And if you're worrying about it, can you guess what I'm going to say? Don't worry about it. Sometimes your mind can get caught in a loop when it's trying not to worry about something, but it is worrying about it, and it's trying not to, and it just gets caught up, and it winds itself up tighter and tighter and tighter, and it just gets more and more highly strung. If that happens, there are a few techniques you can use, but the simplest one is some form of distraction. So remove your focus from the mind and focus it on something else. Depending on how highly strung your mind is, that will determine what you need to distract, what you need to use as a distraction. So you'll need a bigger distraction if your mind is causing more issues. And if your mind's very, very subtly just causing a little issue, then you might only need a little distraction. And again, you follow your intuition, which will guide you as to which distraction is best for you. An example of a little distraction or a subtle distraction is just following your breath. So when you find yourself getting caught up in the mind and you're just getting tangled up there and the focus is just going on the mind, on the mind, on the mind, just come to the breath. Just allow that to work for a while. We'll come to the sense of presence, maybe in your chest here, the sense of being here in your chest, the energetic heart center. And just allow your attention to rest there. If you need a bigger distraction, you might need to go for a walk, take a walk around the room. You might need to do some chanting. You might need to repeat a syllable or a phrase, a mantra. You might need to look at an image, maybe the image of a deity or a person or an object that inspires you, that uplifts you. You've written that dancing helps. I mean, it helps you process the fear. Well, yes. See, you found your way. I had mentioned nothing about dancing, and probably if I continued to speak for another 15 or 30 minutes, I probably never would have mentioned dancing. And yet you found what works for you. And dancing and physical activity is such a wonderful way of processing trauma and fear and emotions. So thank you. Dancing, wonderful.